Good morning, Young Kings. Time for your morning motivation this morning. Don't know exactly what direction, how long this is going to go, but let's get started back in this series called Broken Yet Brilliant. And today's is advancing through adversity, learning to advance through adversity, overcoming difficulty to get to your destination. So there's a lot of things that I want to unpack in today's morning motivation, and I don't know if I'm going to have time enough to get through it all, but we're going to begin. Just ran 13 and a half miles, a half marathon. I woke up early this morning. Well, the Lord woke me up early this morning, around 3:45, and I went to bed kind of late. I went to bed about 11, so I'm thinking, it's too early for me to be getting up now. Let me at least go back to sleep, and get a little more rest before I go running. So I laid back down and I couldn't sleep. I just was laying in the bed, and finally decided, after about 4:30, it was time to get up and go. And it was an invitation for me to enlarge my territory today. So I knew I was going to go further. I just didn't know how much further. And as I started running, figured might as well just go on and do the 13 and do a half marathon and continue on. The difference about this half marathon, at the end, there's nobody at the end saying congratulations, you did a good job, or this and that. There's no award or anything. It's just a continuation of the grind. So advancing through adversity, and turning your difficulties over to reach your destination. So it was yesterday morning. I got to work and received the email, and the email stated that something had been added to my file, and it didn't say what it was. It just says a record had been added to my file. So I log in to my records and do a records review, and seeing that it was a promotion to lieutenant colonel. I was expecting it, but I didn't think it was going to come this fast. I was expecting it, to be another few months out, to a year out, if not more. But sometimes, when God's ready to promote you, He's going to promote you in spite of other people's time frame or your expectations. So it came, and I wanted to really emphasize how you can advance through adversity, and just by keep grinding and keep taking that next step, and keep going through the difficulties. Don't stop when it gets hard. A lot of people think that if it was meant for you to do it, it'd be easy. But the truth of the matter, the fact that it's difficult, means that it was meant for you to do it. The difficulty is the deciding factor for those who really want it, or those who just want to talk about they want it. So if you don't want it, somewhere along that path, it's going to give you opportunity to decide, because adversity is going to come, difficulty is going to come, setback is going to come, and then you just got to decide: are you going to push through it, or are you going to give up and decide that it wasn't worth it? The reality of it is, it is worth it. So I posted a message on Facebook yesterday saying about the records review and that I was promoted, and a lot of people said congratulations and wished me well and stuff of that nature at the end of that. But leading up to that, there's so much adversity and stuff that I had to overcome and setback. And then if you've been watching the series Broken Yet Brilliant, you've been getting an insight on some of the things that has happened throughout my career, both professionally and personally. And it's been a career of detours. And I was going through this book called The Obstacle is the Way, by Ryan Holiday. It's a great book, so check it out if you get a chance. The Obstacle is the Way. And it talks about don't try to go around the obstacle. Don't try to think that it's a setback or that it's an obstacle too much for you. That's part of the training ground that God is using to develop you. Like the things that you're struggling with, it's things that God needs to prep you for your next stage. Like there's a purpose behind your pain. So if you try to avoid it, then you will avoid and you'll miss your purpose. or you miss the real point of your classroom. Like life is a big classroom, and life is, your experience is a tuition that you have to pay to be able to graduate this. I was just telling some individuals yesterday. I said, there's no use for your potential in the afterlife. Like, don't take any potential to the grave. Like, you ought to leave this world tapped out. You know, realize, you got to turn that potential into talent, and you got to continue to develop yourself and continue to go. So I know that was a long introduction. It's probably shorter than most, but there's a few different stories that I want to get to on here. I know last time we picked up, I had just joined the National Guard from the last video, so if you're behind, you have to go get caught up on some of the other series. And I'll accelerate this one because this is advancing through adversity. So learning to overcome the setbacks. And I remember, as I told you, I joined the Guard in '99, but I didn't commission until a lieutenant until 2002. And when I commissioned as a lieutenant, I was coming from enlisted, so I had an enlisted job. In the National Guard, at least when you work full-time, you got to have different slots and control grades to be able to hold that particular job. So when I got promoted to lieutenant, I now outrank my boss. So, and obviously you can't have that. I was working for a sergeant major, and now me being a lieutenant, I outranked him. So to make things right in the workplace, you got to find a new job. I can't sit there and in a position where I outrank my boss. So they gave me 30 days to find a new job, or I could delay my commission and then wait up to 2 years to look for a job later. So I can either delay my commission and wait 2 years for a job to open up, or I can take my commission and lose my job within 30 days. And it was a faith walk. I said, if God get me to it, He's going to get me through it. And that was the mindset I had. Like, hey, and I mentioned in a video before, like, faith is coming to the edge of a plank or a cliff, and there's nothing but darkness out there, and you got to jump, and you got to realize one or two things are going to happen. Either God is going to catch you, or He's going to teach you how to fly. So I got to the edge, and I had 30 days to find a new job. And I had just bought a house at this time. I got a family, wife and 2 daughters, and it's like, man, what do I do? And people was advising me, hey, you don't have to be in a hurry, don't rush, take your time, you could delay it. There'll be a job opening later coming. But I said, you know what, I didn't come this far just to play it safe now. And so I took my commission, and I had 30 days to find a job. And there was this job posting that I thought was going to be right for me, and I thought I was the right candidate. It was down in Detroit. It was a unit that I was going to be assigned to, and all this nature. And I was like, wow, look at the Lord. He's opening up doors for me. And I remember applying for this job, and I thought I was a shoo-in for this job. I had the right skill set, and desire for it. But the guy that was over the hiring board was a major. And obviously I'm just commissioned as a lieutenant. He sent a bad report on my name. Said that he had talked to some people, and they said I was lazy and that I wasn't a good fit, that they didn't know. This is before the interview even happened. And I've seen this dude before this encounter, but I had never had a working relationship or anything with this guy. But he just, started making accusations about me, like that, like I said, I wouldn't show up to work on time and this and that. So my boss at the time was a full bird colonel, Colonel Carr, and I go in because he had wrote me a letter of recommendation for the job. So when this word came back to me that this was my reputation is going out as being lazy, I go to my boss and I say, hey sir, what's going on? You wrote me this recommendation. I've been busting my tail since I've been here, and now I'm getting word that this major said he called up here to talk to someone at work, and they said I was lazy and that I didn't show up to work on time. And I said, well, I'm normally the first one here and the last one leave, and I really take breaks. So I want to understand, like, what's going on. So he picks up the phone right there while I'm in the office, and he calls this major, the full bird colonel. He calls this major. He's like, hey, what's going on? You're talking about one of my soldiers here, and I wrote a letter recommendation for him, and the word that I'm getting from you is contrary to this. And the guy started stuttering, like, and he was like, who did you talk to about Lieutenant Morton? He's like, I talked to someone. He said, who is someone? He's like, well, they work over at this other shop. And he said, he's never worked over there. Why would you call someone over there? Oh, we were just talking, and they was just passing. And it's like, and he was stuttering and talking about people that were talking to people about me who I never worked for or had any working relationship with. So, long story short, the colonel straightened it out, and he's like, hey, from now on, if you want to know something about someone, you go to the source of someone who he works directly for, or you go to the individual. That's how you should run things. So, long story short, did the interview, did a great interview, and I did not get the job. And I thought for sure that was my job, but it was one of those closed doors, and I still had about 2 weeks left before I was out of a job completely. And I thought that was my opportunity, and the door closed. But the reality of it is that when a door closes, there's always God's going to provide a way. So I remember on day 29, um, I got a call from Major Jones, and if you've seen one of the other videos, you'll realize that was the route that I ended up going to flight school on. But she gave me a call on day 29 and said, hey, I got this job that's opening, and I know you're on a time crunch to find a job, so if you're interested, you can start Monday. I said interested, because my job was ending that weekend, and I mean, I didn't have a lapse at all. I went from thinking I was going to be unemployed, trying to figure out if I was going to get unemployment, if I needed to go find another job somewhere else, to stopping one job on Friday and starting my new job on Monday, and then end up having an opportunity to go to flight school shortly after that. So had I took that job in Detroit and got that job in Detroit, I would have never have had the opportunity to go to flight school. So sometimes when you pressing the issue so much and you thinking like, hey, that is the way God's going to bless me, and that door closes, sometimes that can destroy you. So sometimes you got to be able to advance through adversity and keep going. I know today was a long run today, and I remember on this run that I just embarked upon, at about that 6-7 mile mark, I mean, there was this big hill, and I mean, I'm exaggerating, maybe say it's big hill, but sometimes they say you make mountains out of molehills, but for me, this hill seemed humongous, and I'm about halfway in, and I know I'm about 6-7 miles out, and I'm realizing I still got about 6-7 miles to get back to where I started from, because I haven't even started the return trip to get back to where I started to get my car from. So I remember that as I was looking up, it got a little dark on here, excuse me, but as I was looking up at the hill and I was focusing on the road ahead, it became like discouraging. I was like, man, this is a long hill. And I realized the more I focused on that obstacle, the more difficult that hill became. So it came to a point where I had to put my head down and just focus on the next step, and just not look at so far ahead, because sometimes when you look so far ahead, you can get distracted by the difficulties ahead. And sometimes it's wisdom in just looking down and just focusing on that next step, and just taking that next step and making sure that you have progress that way. And as I turned my head down to focus on that next step, I realized that I was making progress. And I would occasionally look up, and I would be halfway up there, and then I had to put my head back down and realize, hey, just one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And I realized the beauty of running. It's like you can't celebrate the step you just took, because progress is in that next step, and there's a lot of wisdom in what I just said there. You might have to go back and rewind that, but to sit there and say, well, I just took this step, and that's not the finish line. And that's how I felt or how I'm feeling now is like with this promotion. Yeah, I'm excited about being a lieutenant colonel. It's been a long journey getting to this far, and it's been a lot of obstacles along the way, and a lot of setbacks that have been discouraging. The times that I wanted to quit and give up, but I feel like that my life is still just beginning. It's like the significance of me running a half marathon. It's like I'm at the halfway point. You know, I feel like there's more left. You know, my body is tapped out right now, but it feels like there's an opportunity, an invitation um, to either rest, you know, and to say, hey, enough's enough. And truly, I could stop today and retire, and people would say, hey, I'm proud of you. You've done a lot. You know, I just recently bought a house. Um, just recently been promoted, and um, it would be so easy just to coast and just say, hey, you know what, I came a long way, enough's enough. um, but the reality of it is, it's like it's time to put my head down and not celebrate the last step I just took, but to get into the closet and into the cave and start planning, what does this next 5 years look like? And I realized, like, there's it's building block, like every step is connected to the next, although you may not be able to see it. God, sometimes he hides things from um, the wisdom of man, and he doesn't reveal things in the beginning. Sometimes you got to go through it, and then you got to look back on it and you reflect on it, and you realize that, hey, I see why, and how the steps are connected. And I realized, like, there's an invitation for me now, um, to even go even further. And there's this invitation doesn't come with a guarantee that just because you go, things will fall in line and things will happen. But I tell you what, if you don't go, it definitely won't happen. So I don't know what's next, but I know that, as I mentioned yesterday, I just got promoted. And also yesterday, what just happened is that I put my name in a hat for a joint assignment um, in DC to work at the Pentagon or abroad. So although I just accomplished one feat, I'm planting the seeds for my next one. Like, the 2-star general and 1-star general just endorsed my packet to leave the state, to have potential to go out on an assignment, to work at the Pentagon, and or on a joint or strategic assignment. And for me, it's like, wow. I thought, a lot of people would jump at that, but come to find out, there's only 2 people applied, for this position, and that's been how I had the chance to advance, through adversity. It's like when other people are taking it easy and having a setback, or just, kind of wanting to rest, is I decided to say yes. When I end up working at the U.S. Embassy in Liberia, um, it was a wonderful job there. I mean, it exposed me to a lot of different things, different environments. That sounds kind of bright, but it exposed me to a lot of different things. But the thing about it, when I applied for the job, I thought, man, for sure, a lot of people was going to apply for this job. And once again, I guess the situation was there. It's like in Liberia, they were just coming off Ebola, and everybody was nervous about going there and whatnot. But for me, I looked at it as an opportunity, to take advantage of that. And once again, I was the only one to apply for the job, and I got in and over there and was able to work at that strategic level with the State Department at the U.S. Embassy. So now here it is, and now another opportunity to go to the Pentagon, and not that many people are interested in going out there. And I'm sure they got their reason and their justification. They got stuff going on in their life, and they can, um, take it easy. They'd rather stay in comfort. But for me, sometimes comfort is crippling. It'll keep you from becoming where you need to be, or from where you want to go. So I realized with this difficulty in my life, it's like we went through the relationship portion of how let me get over here, let me turn this way, how I had to leave Georgia, come back to Ypsilanti to go to college, and then finally come back to Lansing to restore and preserve my marriage. Like the ability, she just didn't have confidence in me at the time. And the thing about this, while I was running, I was reminded of Moses when he led people, when he was talking to Pharaoh and he was trying to lead his people out of Egypt. And the thing about that story that was significant is that um, Moses would go before Pharaoh and he would display, the hand of God on his life, showing like he was turning his rod into a stake, and he was doing all these things to show like, hey, God is with him. And the more things that he showed, the harder Pharaoh's heart became, and he didn't want to let him go. He wanted to keep him in bondage, and it was apparent that God was working in and with Moses, but Pharaoh's heart was hard. But it was God that hardened Pharaoh's heart. And I say that because there's a lot of people that would want to keep you in bondage. They can see the hand of God on your life, and they can see God moving in your life, but their heart is becoming hardened. So you just got to be careful not to get distracted by people's hardened hearts. And Moses wasn't perfect. I remember recalling that story. Like Moses seen something, um, and he seen this man attacking someone else. So Moses killed a man during his journey. So it's like, even in Moses' righteousness of trying to lead his people out, he wasn't without sin, and he went in and cast, a stone against the man's head and killed him, and just flat out murdered a man. And there are people that would, mock Moses, about his temper and stuff, like, hey, what are you gonna do? Kill me like you killed the last man? But so there's people that see you, and they see your failure, and they would try to make it an indictment against your future, saying that you're not who you say you are, or if you were a man of God, then this wouldn't happen. And I draw that parallel. To me, it's like, and I'm not saying that I'm Moses or anything like that, but it's just, an analogy. Like, there's things where people will be able to point back at this marriage and will try to say, hey, um, I didn't kill this marriage. And I remember telling my friend Eric, I said, you know what, I feel like I fucked up a bad marriage. It wasn't like, because he's my language, it wasn't like I messed up a good thing and that I had it right. It was just, it was a bad situation. And it's probably bad for her too. I gave a few stories on there, but and that analogy is like, some people want to keep me in bondage to where I'm going, and sometimes after you display the hand of God on your life, sometimes you just got to get the people who were willing to follow you, and then you got to go. And it wasn't able to have that Red Sea party moment until they made up their mind, like, hey, it's in spite of Pharaoh's hard heart, it's time for us to get up out of this bondage. Um, and, and that's where I'm at now. In spite of this hard heart, that my spouse has, it's time for me to get up out of bondage and try to figure out my way to freedom. And yes, I made mistakes along the way, but that doesn't um, deter me from my destination of being free. Like, I still don't want shackles on me because of a mistake that I made. Um, and there's several things, and we talked about how um, my destiny and my advancing through adversity. And I just told you I planted the seed already to go in DC, so I already know that my future is going to take me out of Lansing. So obviously my relationship has not flourished anywhere except, it was not even in Lansing. So maybe that's connected to the reason. Like, my future is like, my next 5-year plan, and I'll release it early to you because I'm in the lab trying to make it, and there's an element of accountability when you say it. I think after this battalion command that I'm in right now, I think I'm gonna be down in DC, working at a strategic level, do that for a few years, and then I'll go to work college, and that's in Pennsylvania. So all these things are taking me away from here in Lansing. So maybe that's why this relationship is going to end, because the limits of this relationship is going to keep me here, and it's time for me to leave out of here. And what's interesting, and this is not a shot or intended to be a shot, but you know, the inability for her to follow me anywhere. But the ironic thing now is, like, now that we're at this date. She wants to pick up and move to North Carolina with one of her friends that's recently divorced. And it's like, here it is. Like, I've been providing for you for a quarter of a century, 25 years, and you refuse to follow me anywhere. But all of a sudden, you want to follow this friend, this recently divorced friend, which is ironic. And I'll put it out there. Shots fired. Like, this chick is recently divorced, and she divorced her husband for cheating, right? Which, that's scriptural. You can choose to leave for cheating. But the ironic thing about it is that you divorce him for cheating, but then you get to North Carolina and you sleeping with a married man. Like, how do I know this? It's my man's down there. So it's like you go down there from being the main chick, and your dude had a side chick, to go down to North Carolina being somebody's side chick. So it's crazy how deluded and delusional people are when they're making these decisions. And the reality of it is like, you're trying to lead Lord down that same path. And I tell you this, I think you need to do the same thing I'm about to do. And this is real talk. And I'm going to call your name out, Monica. This is what you need to do. You need to be able to let Laura go. You don't love her. You're about to destroy that woman. So I need to let go. She might not need to be with me, but she damn sure don't need to be with you and following you, trying to live your best life down there faking it. So call a spade a spade. I think she's right for leaving me and doing her own thing. But if you really love that woman, you wouldn't drag her into the mess that you're doing down there. So, but I understand the analogy that misery loves company. And the ironic thing about it is, like, when the spouse is with me, she gets tired about 9-10 o'clock, and it's time to go home. But when she gets out with this girl, they hang out 2, 3, 4 in the morning. She come back smelling like weed and stuff, and she's free to do that. She's do that. But the ironic thing about it is, like, I remember specifically, and I'm going to end pretty soon, going to my man Sherman wedding. And after the wedding, Sherman and Charlotte, they wanted to go out to the club and have a drink or something afterwards. And I remember we got up to the door of the club. This is about a decade ago. We got up to the door of the club, and Laura turns around and says, "Hey, I'm not going in there. This ain't my lifestyle. This ain't something I want to do." So look at Sherman and say, "Hey man, we just gonna head home. She doesn't want to go up in there, so we'll catch up with y'all another time." Now this is his wedding day. And she said she didn't want to go up in the club. But then about a few months later or a year later, I go to Afghanistan, and then I get a message in Afghanistan that she's telling me she's going out to the club with her friend Monica for her bachelorette party. And I think it's all ironic, because she had told me that that's not something she did and wanted to do, but then she turns around and do it to go to your wedding anniversary, your bachelorette party, and they hang out. Now I'm in Afghanistan. Now you wouldn't do it with me while I'm back in the States at my man's wedding, but then you're gonna go celebrate that. So I say that the ironic part about it is that she's in the club to go to your bachelorette party. Then she's in the club after that to go to your divorce party. Now she wants to move down there and hang out with you. I just think that's, a bit ironic. But if that's the life she chooses, then that's the life she chooses. But I'm going to advance through adversity. And, my calling is going to take me beyond this. So although I can be broken yet brilliant, I advance through adversity. I overcome difficulties to get to my destination. And I'm going to shoot for the moon. Even if I miss, I'm going to be among the stars. And don't be surprised if one of those stars lands on my chest. Yeah, y'all figure that out later. Dream big. Make it a great day.